The story begins with a young boy named Lloyd getting fired from the kingdom's #1 party because his magic is dog water, but no one knows that he's actually the student of a legendary witch named Merlin who has secretly trained him into an ultimate white mage to finish off the demon lord that her first apprentice gave his life to stop. After rescuing him from his destroyed hometown, Merlin started training Lloyd by showing him a fire spell. She tells him that if he can't copy that spell by night, he won't get any dinner. Hearing this, Lloyd starts practicing with everything he has and manages to pull it off by sunset. Merlin praises him for his effort, but then teases him by burning him up. The next day, she teaches him some water magic, which Lloyd manages to copy right away, but she humbles him again with a cold shower. This becomes Lloyd's everyday life, where he practices other elemental magic and gets bullied by Merlin for being weak. One evening, Merlin wakes up with a nasty hangover after binge drinking all night because she's still single, so Lloyd casts some healing magic on her to ease the suffering. She feels better right away and pulls him into a really wholesome hug. But right as he thinks he's finally made mommy proud, she says it's time for some more training. Just like that, years pass by, and one day we see Merlin holding a strange book and remembering her past. Suddenly, Lloyd walks in to tell her that dinner's ready, but the clumsy lady drops the book and Lloyd ends up picking it up, but the moment his fingers touch it, some ancient knowledge floods into his brain and knocks him out cold. Merlin figures out that he really has the Chosen One's potential and promises not to repeat the mistakes she made with her last student. The next morning, she shows him how strong white mages can be by healing a dead tree and making it full of fruit. That night, she teaches him all kinds of magic, but when Lloyd asks what ancient magic is, Merlin avoids the question and tells him not to worry about it. His tough training keeps going, and she keeps drilling it into him that he does not have any talent, so he can't afford to slack off, and in the evening, she teaches him about magic stones that can turn anything they touch into stone as well, even people, making Lloyd wonder if it's possible to reverse them. A couple of weeks later, Merlin blindfolds Lloyd, drops him in a forest, and tells him to find his way back home within a week using just his magic and his tiny sword. His trial kicks off abruptly when a gray wolf attacks and he barely manages to escape, quickly realizing that healing magic alone won't get him back because home is insanely far. Every night he mixes spells he already knows to craft new ones and gets a little stronger with each day. One night he steps on a twig and ends up drawing in a huge spider monster. Running for his life, he casts a speed spell that turns him into the Flash, and by the end of the week, he finally makes it back in time to fall face first right at Merlin's door. Years go by, and one day Lloyd notices a magazine about the city that tickles his fancy. Over the years, Merlin keeps dragging him into whatever crazy spell she's cooking up, but during all her weird experiments, Lloyd keeps thinking about the city. Then one day, Merlin barges into his room to grab him for another one of her illegal experiments and finds it is completely empty because Lloyd set out for the city. After a long trip, Lloyd finally reaches the stunningly beautiful town. As he walks through the busy streets, a cart nearly runs him over, but even that feels exciting to someone like him. He buys a bagel on a food street, and while he's standing around minding his business, a flyer slaps him in the face while a hooded figure watches quietly from a distance. Reading the adventurer recruitment flyer, he signs up at the guild and quickly gets scooped up by the hero Alan, who takes him straight into a mission to slay a Cyclops. The monster smashes a pillar and brings the ceiling crashing down, and Lloyd is excited as things suddenly get way too intense for his first adventure. Alan yells at Shina to boost him with white magic, but before she even moves, Lloyd quietly casts a buff on everyone without them noticing. After Shina boosts him with healing magic, Alan charges, and while the archer girl shoots the Cyclops in the eye to blind it. As the beast lunges toward the girls, Lena blocks it with her shield, and the mage follows up by trapping it with magic tentacles. That gives Alan the perfect chance to leap in and land a huge overhead strike to finish the job. Shina rushes over and gushes all over Alan, who's being as smug as ever, but Lloyd is just relieved they all made it out alive. But Lena starts to wonder if Lloyd was the real reason they got that sudden boost in strength. On the way back, Alan's team makes a flashy return, and before long, the whole city is buzzing about the hero who slayed a Cyclops. But back at the party mansion, Alan tosses Lloyd a pathetic 5 gold coins from the reward just because he's a low-tier D rank. After that, he raises a toast to his own greatness, but Lloyd walks out saying he's heading home because he doesn't like drinking. But the hero laughs it off and says he never wanted to party with a useless white mage anyway, calling Lloyd nothing more than a team mascot, which makes all the girls except Lena laugh. Later that night, someone knocks on Merlin's door and she guesses it is Will, the same hooded guy who's been watching Lloyd. He tells her that Lloyd joined Alan's hero party, and she thanks him for helping give the kids some real battle experience. After taking a drink to settle her nerves, Will becomes serious and asks if she regrets it, which makes Merlin tighten up and repeat that she won't make the same mistake again. Will reminds her of the time they fought the demon lord and he self-destructed, wiping out her whole party and everyone in the city. But in the final moments, her first apprentice Sebel used ancient magic to reverse the destruction and bring everyone back at the cost of his soul. Back in the city, an obnoxiously loud guy spreads word about the heroic tales of Alan the hero, who was the pride of the nation for slaying countless monsters with his holy sword. He announces that Alan is currently off slaying a minotaur while the hero with an ego the size of a castle struggles hard against it. But just when things look bad, Lloyd saves the day with white magic and Lena jumps in to stop their so-called leader from getting a game over. She suddenly feels her power rise and uses it to launch the minotaur back, right as Shaina finishes casting her spell to heal Alan while the mage locks down the monster with a restraint. That leaves just enough room for Alan to rush in and land the final blow, after which he acts like he carried the whole fight by himself. Later that night at the mansion, Lena is buried in a book when Alan strolls by and tells her to loosen up for once. She says she's been looking into defense tactics because her power's been spiking in battle for no clear reason, and that kind of thing's too sus to ignore. Alan flops down on the couch and casually says he's felt stronger too, even though he hasn't trained in ages. He laughs it off, saying he's just built different and doesn't need training anyway, but the way he slumps on the couch like a lazy slob makes Lena roll her eyes. Meanwhile, a squad of knights camping near the woods gets ambushed by a massive golem and wiped out in seconds. The next day, Alan gets summoned to the Knight Order, where they tell him about the attack near the border and ask him to investigate right away since those guards were supposed to keep smuggler routes into the black market in check. Confident as ever, Alan says smashing a few rocks should be easy and leads the group into the forest. Lloyd says the enemy's near the waterfall and uses a search spell to confirm it, guiding the team into a hidden cave behind the falls. They beat the first golem without trouble, but Alan doesn't notice that the real threat is a demon sorcerer who's hiding in the shadows and summoning more golems. Lloyd figures it out and tells the group the demon's using a black magic stone to control all the golems. He buffs the archer Lulu and tells her to shoot the demon. She hesitates because she is not used to taking orders from a backline nobody, but goes for it anyway and lands a shot that curves around the rocks and hits him right where it hurts. Lloyd then tells the mage to teleport the demon's staff into his hands. She gives him a weird look before doing it, and she's amazed when he seals the staff like it's nothing even though it should be impossible. Seeing Lloyd steal his spotlight drives Alan crazy, so he jumps in and says he'll solo the golem just to show off. Lloyd warns him that without the demon's control, the golem is unstable, but Alan charges in anyway. Lloyd ends up saving the fool at the very last second before he gets flattened into a pancake, which just makes Alan even angrier, so he takes it all out on the golem with a single brutal hit. When they get back, Alan drops onto his throne, stares at Lloyd and says he's fired because all he ever does is sit in the back and he is somehow more useless than Aqua. Lloyd admits he's not overpowered and says his magic still needs work, but Alan doesn't care and tells the eyesore to disappear already. Everyone laughs and makes fun of Lloyd except Lena, who quietly watches him walk out with his pride in pieces. At the guild, Lloyd tries asking other parties to take him in but gets turned down again and again, until he gives up and walks away feeling completely worthless. Then he hears a loud voice at the front desk where a pink-haired girl named Yu begs the guild lady to get her a white mage as soon as possible. The guild lady spots Lloyd standing nearby and says he's available, and before he knows it, Yu pulls him into a quick interview and drags him away. Just a few hours ago, Lloyd was wandering the streets alone after being dumped by his party, feeling absolutely crushed as Alan's insults and his own lack of skill tore at him from the inside. Sitting at a fountain, he thinks about how incredible his master truly was, and her harsh words about his lack of talent and experience cut deeper now than ever. Meanwhile, somewhere in the woods, Yu and her party hide in the bushes, preparing to strike on the enemy. After a short pep talk, the frontliners charge in and the mage Silica follows up by torching the enemies with a blazing fireball. But because the next spell will take time to chant, the dirty bandits rush her down only to get taken out instantly by the party's archer who covers her form above. Yu barrels through the rest like a beast, taking down enemies one after another, but when one of them jumps her from behind, the tank rushes in just in time to shield her. The thug mocks him for being too weak. After their white mage boosts his stats, he launches the bandit like a sack of potatoes. Up above, a fat dwarf watches the whole scene in sheer panic, unable to figure out how the adventurers are so strong. Suddenly, Yu appears right behind him and guesses he must be the boss of the attackers. He stares at her necklace and realizes that she's actually an S-rank adventurer. Even then, he tries to keep his cool and asks Yu if she thinks she can handle his ultimate weapon as he summons a giant golem from beneath the ground. The team quickly realizes that its body is made from a material that makes both spells and arrows useless. But Yu doesn't hesitate and slams her full power into her greatsword, but her slash barely makes a dent in its thick shell. Knowing she needs more raw power, she calls out to the white mage Clum and asks for a stat boost. With her strength buffed up, she slices clean through the golem like it's made of butter. Once the fight is over, Clum apologizes for zoning out during such a serious battle, but instead of scolding her, Yu just asks about her sister Sylvie's condition. Clum's expression turns dark and she quietly walks off, leaving the party behind. Around the same time, Lloyd was dragging himself through day 3 of his failed attempt to find a new party when Yu stumbled on him at the exact right moment. She couldn't care less whether he wants to join or not and just drags him along anyway. When they arrive, the others look disappointed that she didn't bring back a white mage, even though one is literally standing right there. With her usual energy, Yu starts to introduce him but stutters halfway through because she doesn't even know the guy's name, so Lloyd steps up and introduces himself to Dagas, the shieldler, Cross the archer, and Silica the mage. Yu then proudly says she's the leader and welcomes him with a big grin, though Lloyd reminds her he never agreed to anything. The team is in shock though because apparently she has a habit of driving in randoms without warning. Cross says they might as well cancel their current job since finishing it without Clum is basically impossible and no regular mage could ever fill her shoes. Even Silica gently asks Yu to give up on the request, but the pink-haired girl flat out refuses and says there's no way she's ditching a client in trouble. Lloyd then asks why they don't just let another party handle the quest, and Silica explains that it's an A-rank job and there are no other A-rank parties in town right now, so only an S-rank team like theirs can take it. Lloyd can't believe he's standing in front of real S-rankers, but Alan's harsh words about him humble him just as fast. While he stands there looking depressed, Yu excitedly says they're all set if Lloyd is actually strong and grins at him with zero doubt. She takes him out into the woods and tells him to show the team what he's got, but all he can imagine are their disappointed faces when they see his skills are mid at best. Seeing him freeze up, Dagas tells Yu to at least give the guy a specific spell to test him, so she tells Lloyd to cast physical enhancement on the whole party. Lloyd is completely stunned and both Cross and Silica point out that it's impossible for a regular white mage to do that, but Lloyd just wants to double check if she'll really let him join if he manages to pull it off. Yu makes it clear that he's not allowed to cheat and has to enhance everyone at the same time. It sounds so easy that Lloyd wonders if she's trolling him for fun. Feeling the depressive aura come off him, Yu asks him if he can't actually do it, and the others assure him there is no need to fake it. But Lloyd says it's a piece of cake and casually summons his staff out of thin air, which is enough to stun them, but he also casts the spell instantly without chanting. When he's done, Yu completely forgets about the spell itself and gets way more impressed by the storage spell, while Dagas questions if that was a silent cast, and Cross feels so strong he could bench press a monster truck. Yu wants to test it herself and with one clean slice her sword sends the target flying and crashing far away. Everyone stares in stunned silence while Lloyd innocently says he just used 5 different enhancement spells on them. The team stares at him like they're ready to throw hands, and Lloyd nervously hopes they're not mad since that was the least he could do. The awkward moment painfully drags on and Lloyd really thinks he's about to get kicked again. He politely explains that he knew from the start he wasn't good enough to replace the real S-rank white mage and tries to walk away with some dignity until Yu yells at him to stop right there. A few moments later, Lloyd stuns them all again by revealing he used to be in the heroes party with Alan, who's one of the only 4 official heroes in the world before he got kicked out for being too weak. Cross is disgusted by the high standards of that team, while Silica says he's the most talented mage she's seen in her life. Lloyd humbles himself again and gently asks what happened to their white mage, and Yu finally explains that Clum resigned to take care of her sick little sister. Even after adventuring all day, Clum looked after her sister all night and eventually burned herself out completely. In the end, she spaced out too often during missions and felt like she was becoming a burden, so she left the party. Lloyd listens quietly and understands their pain. Seeing how sad they all look, he realizes that Clum must have meant the world to them. He even feels a little jealous of how deeply her friends care for her. Still, he softly asks what exactly happened to her sister. The rice cooker with pink hair vaguely remembers it had something to do with her body slowly turning into stone. That instantly reminds Lloyd of what Merlin once told him about magic stones being able to transform anything they touch into magic stones as well. That spark lights something in his mind, and he immediately asks Yu to take him to Clum's house right away. At her door, Yu and Lloyd say hi to Clum, who has eye bags darker than Obama's. They head inside and ask about her sister's condition. So Clum explains that it all started during an old adventure when they were suddenly attacked by a monster. Yu guesses the monster caused Sylvie's state, but Clum quickly denies it and says she only found her sister passed out on the ground with no memory of what happened. Lloyd starts asking about symptoms, so Clum decides to take him straight to Sylvie to let him see for himself. The moment she opens the bedroom door, a thick dark energy pours out. Clum lifts the blanket to reveal just how advanced her condition is. Just as it seems hopeless, the goat himself walks up and says he might be able to fully cure her. Clum seriously doubts that some random white mage you found can fix something even advanced healing magic couldn't. He asks if anything with dense mana might have caused Sylvie's injury, and Clum suddenly remembers that there was a magic stone in the cave. Seeing the wound, Sherlock Holmes figures out that the stone pierced her and flooded her body with so much mana that it started turning to stone. Clum still doubts him, but Lloyd says that's what his master taught him, and Yu begs her to just trust him this one time. Hearing that, Lloyd does what he does best and starts sucking hard. He drains as much mana from Sylvie's body as he possibly can. Clum stares in pure confusion and demands to know what he just did, so Lloyd explains that he reversed a mana transfer spell to pull energy out instead of putting it in, which no one has ever done before. He says she'll recover if he drains all the excess mana down to almost nothing and heals her while doing so. He also mentions that Lum wouldn't recognize this healing magic because it's an old, wildly inefficient method that lets him burn off the mana he's absorbing while he heals. Yu questions if that's genius or not, and Clum explains that he's casting 2 original spells at once, and the fact that he's not even breaking a sweat is amazing. Both girls sit on the edge of their seats as Sylvie's magic shell disappears right in front of their eyes. After countless years stuck in a coma, her eyes finally open, and for the first time in forever, Clum watches Sylvie wake up. As the sun sets, Clum gives Lloyd her deepest thanks and tells Yu she's going to team up with her sister again like the old days, which makes Yu a little sad. On her way out, the ginger gives a smile to Lloyd and says she is glad her friends now have such a dependable white mage. Lloyd returns a gentle smile and says he is not worthy, but she tells him to stop doubting himself and just follow his heart. Later that night at the tavern, Silica and Daggis are still trying to believe Lloyd actually cured Sylvie, but he's being so annoyingly humble about it that Yu smacks him upside the head. The thick-headed fool picks another excuse to feel sad and says he's upset that Clum won't be rejoining the party, but one by one, the others remind him that her happiness matters more than anything else. Hearing Yu's deep and honest gratitude again slowly deletes Alan's smug, ugly face from Lloyd's mind. Watching how truly happy everyone looks, Lloyd finally listens to his heart and confesses that he wants to officially join them. The team welcomes him with open arms. Yu declares him a full member and announces they're throwing a welcome party whether he likes it or not. The party kicks off with everyone chugging beer like it's the cure for all the problems in their life, and Yu tells Lloyd he can eat as much as he wants. He doesn't need to hear that twice and starts gobbling down that food because he is totally blown away by how good everything tastes in the city. Cross calls the food mid at best, but Lloyd explains that his master used to feed him whatever random plants or mushrooms she found growing in her garden. The best meal he ever got was dry monster meat with no sauce or seasoning. Silica feels bad for the guy when he shares that it's the whole reason he got into cooking in the first place. Then the group starts wondering what his master was even like, and Lloyd says she's basically Megumin if Megumin wasn't flat and really into illegal experiments. Silica is shocked someone like that could even teach him support magic, mainly because she is not a white mage herself. She says that it must have been amazing to be her student, but Lloyd cuts her off instantly and says he'd rather jump off a cliff than go through that nightmare again, as traumatic flashbacks of her wild training methods play out in his head. That's when Cross thinks that she sounds like a rough teacher, but Lloyd insists she was actually kind too as he remembers her warm hugs. Once the party settles, Yu wastes no time and jumps right into strategy talk, but Daggis points out that Lloyd still isn't fully up to speed on how things work. Yu tries to slime her way out of it by admitting she's not great at explaining things, so Daggis tells her to stop whining and act serious if she wants to lead the team. With that, she pulls out the request and Daggis breaks it down. The mission is to stop a bunch of monsters that have been trampling farmland and wrecking crops. The weird part is that it's not just one species. Lloyd hears that and immediately doubts it because different monsters never work together, but Daggis insists that it must be true if the client said so. Yu then gets serious about helping the people in need, but Cross reminds her that if a full pack of monsters shows up, single target DPS like him and Yui are basically dead weight. Silica adds that her wide area magic hits hard, but she doesn't have endless mana to keep nuking monsters forever. The girl then looks at Lloyd, but he admits with a bit of shame that his offensive magic is also pretty weak. That's when Daggis lays out a 5-head strategy that he and Yui will gather all the monsters into one big cluster, and Silica will nuke them in one massive blow, while Lloyd and Cross stay in the back and cover them. Just imagining herself going full blast with Lloyd's buffs gets Silica excited, but Lloyd tells her to calm down and repeats that he got kicked from his last party because his powers weren't good enough. But Cross says he would rather have a teammate who knows he's weak than a faker. That gives Lloyd a small boost of confidence, and the team gets ready to head home after roasting Yu like they always do. As our boy walks off in the opposite direction, Daggis tells him to wait and asks why he's not coming to the inn, which makes Lloyd awkwardly admit he's been sleeping on the streets the past few days. Feeling bad for the guy, Daggis tosses him a bag of coins and says he'll just cut it from his future pay. Lloyd thanks him and promises to pull his weight, so Daggis grins and says he's curious to see what the new guy can really do. The next morning, he wakes up late as usual and finds the whole gang already outside. What catches her off guard is that no one's holding any backpacks. Turns out, Lloyd packed everything inside his dimensional storage. After he stores her gear too, the ladies start fangirling over how insanely helpful he is, so Lloyd offers to teach them how to use storage magic too, because everyone is born with enough mana to pull it off. Daggis finds it hard to believe, but Lloyd says it's totally possible after some training. Cross dreams of all the arrows he could carry, while Silica also struggles to hold back her excitement. Before they head out, Yu twirls around like a Barbie because she is exploding with energy after getting Lloyd's buffs. The party reaches a deeper part of the forest, where Daggis explains that beyond those mountains lies the Magocracy, also known as the Land of Demons. They haven't attacked in a long time, but no one knows when they will try to take over the continent again. As they cross a sketchy rope bridge, the group starts to feel nervous, so Yu being Yu thinks it is the perfect time to play a game where everyone has to answer her dumb riddle with an even dumber answer. Lloyd stays silent while the others act like kids, but Yu pushes him to join and tells him to crack a joke. Lloyd refuses and says his master raised him to be a certified Chad, so cringe isn't in his vocabulary. Cross tells him to relax and just shout out whatever first pops into his brain, so Lloyd locks in, but Yu warns him there's no point playing if he takes it too seriously, because the whole idea is to blow off steam during tough quests. After she clears that up, she drops the second riddle and everyone yells out nonsense answers again, while Lloyd freezes out on the spot. He apologizes and says he's too stupid to be stupid, making them glad that he is finally on the same wavelength. At the same time, a shady mage deep in the forest kneels before a big black stone that leaks an evil energy. Back at the river, Yu's party sets up camp. Lloyd pulls all their bags out of storage, and the hard work leaves the girls hot, sweaty, and tired. Yu tries to wiggle out of chores by asking Daggis for a break, but the guy tells her there's still a long list of stuff to finish. On hearing that, Lloyd offers to handle the work himself and lets Yu sneak off with Silica. As he heads into the woods to grab firewood, he spots a tree with the same golden fruit marin once used to show off healing magic. He takes a bite and starts thinking back on the good times until a loud scream snaps him back to reality. The screams are from Yu and Silica, who are trapped between a giant basilisk and a waterfall. Without wasting a second, Lloyd rushes toward them and casts fire magic while he slides down the cliff. His fireball slams into the snake, instantly grabbing its attention, and he yells at the girls to get to land as fast as they can. Now standing right in front of the monster, he summons Silica's staff and Yu's sword from storage, and throws both weapons their way while also casting healing spells to buff them up. As the huge snake dives in to bite Lloyd's face off, Yu flies in and slices it clean in half like a sushi chef before landing next to him. The basilisk gets really angry and starts moving around like crazy, so Silica hurls a giant fireball that cooks the thing to medium rare in a single shot thanks to Lloyd's buff, even surprising her with how strong her magic's gotten. When Yu asks Lloyd to stash her sword again, her towel falls off, so she punishes him with a solid slap across the face. Back at the camp, Lloyd begins teaching the team how to use storage magic with a short and easy explanation, but somehow they all struggle hard. Even after training for hours, it just looks like they're groping the air. Lloyd is disappointed and thinks he must be a pretty trash teacher, but the others tell him that you just need more time to get good. Then Silica suddenly says storage out loud and the spell activates. It quickly hits Yu and the rest that they are not geniuses like Lloyd, so they need to chant to use the spell, and by sunset, Silica gets the hang of it. As night settles in, a thick silence fills the forest. Lloyd keeps watch beside Yu while the rest of the crew sleeps. She quietly takes a seat next to him since no monsters are nearby and shyly thanks him for tagging along with her mess of a party. Lloyd admits he was just as hopeless before joining them. Even so, Yu says she feels bad for driving him into her mess without asking first, which reminds Lloyd of how she suddenly got really serious about their struggling client. He asks why she's so determined to finish the request. Yu awkwardly laughs and says that it reminded her of home. Back when she was little, a monster horde wiped out her entire village, and she was the only survivor. Also, she really feels for the people because the village is cut off from the outside and the people will run out of food if the monsters destroy their fields. Just then, Lloyd cuts her off as he senses something coming. He is ready for a fight and tells her to wake everyone else up. Not too far from camp, they spot an army of pollarks, just like the quest mentioned. As they wonder where the bugs are going, Lloyd spots a second swarm coming straight for them and signals the group to slowly back up, But you being you steps on a stick. That loud crack echoes through the forest, and just like that, the three monsters turn around and charge at them. They take off running at full speed, but one Powler jumps in and blocks the path while two more come from the sides. Taking their weapons out of the storage, they huddle up and try to defend against sticky web attacks from three different angles. The spiders move smartly, and one even manages to steal Silica's staff during the chaos. Lloyd and the others quietly wait like it's a turn-based game, and the second the monsters finish their round, he puts on his game face and casts his enhancement magic on the whole squad. Now overflowing with energy, Yu jumps right at the first monster as she slices through webs, while Cross launches himself into a tree with his buffed-up legs to grab Silica's staff. As he returns it to her, Yu dashes beneath a Powler, cuts off half its legs, and makes it fall to the ground. She dodges the other monster's attack and uses the web to surf over to the third one, and cuts it up. That's when Lloyd calls out to Cross and Silica to finish them off, so Silica fires off a fireball which splits into three smaller fireballs that light up the arrows Cross fires off, causing the monsters to burn on contact. Once the battle is over, Lloyd apologizes for giving orders out of nowhere and thinks Yu will be mad at him. Instead, Daggers backs him up and says he should do that more often because he's actually pretty good at it, while Yu thanks him for coming in clutch. Lloyd regains some of his self-respect after hearing that, and the very next day, his students make him proud by pulling off storage magic on the first try. Full of excitement, Yu leads her crew deeper into the forest, but Lloyd stays behind still wondering where all those monsters were actually going. At night, Lloyd sits alone by the campfire and thinks the Powlurks were acting strangely because the whole swarm was heading in one direction. Just then, Yu asks him out of concern if he really wants to keep watch all by himself. Silica also offers to take turns with him, but Lloyd tells them to rest and save their energy in case of an emergency. Yu worries about him, but he tells her it's no big deal because this is the least he can do for them. That just makes her even more upset, but Silica steps in and calms her down, while Daggers and Cross quietly peek out from inside the tent. The next day, they push deeper into the woods and Yu still feels bad for Lloyd. During the break, she sees him cast some odd magic and asks him what it is. Yu tells her that he used Detect to check that there are no lurking monsters. He himself is surprised that he can use that kind of magic, but he shrugs it off as nothing special and says he'll run it constantly to keep the party safe from surprise attacks. That amazes Yu, and she asks if it isn't a burden, but he reassures her he's fine. She tells him to ask if he ever needs help, and he flat out says no. Yu goes quiet on hearing that and walks away feeling down while Lloyd is clueless. Later that night, Lloyd keeps watch alone, which makes Yu suspect he doesn't trust her party. She thinks his powers are amazing but feels hurt that he won't lean on them. Seeing her worry, Silica tells her it'll take time to build trust, just like it did with them, and reminds Yu that Lloyd pushes himself because he underestimates his own worth. Hearing that, Yu finds him mysterious and feels a little curious about his past. Silica chimes in that she can't wait for him to open up about his cool backstory, and Yu also gets excited for that day. On the outside, Daggers tells Lloyd he needs to talk, but Lloyd says he can't leave his guard duty. Cross then steps up like a champ and offers to stand guard instead. Watching them head into the forest, he wonders if their plan will really work. After that, Daggers sets up a clever alarm that makes noise whenever monsters pass by, and then tells Lloyd he built it so his friend can rest. That makes Lloyd uneasy, but Daggers confidently explains that this is how they stayed safe at night before Lloyd joined. He tells Lloyd to get some sleep, but Lloyd argues he can't use his detect spell while unconscious. Hearing that, Daggers feels offended that Lloyd doesn't trust him, and Lloyd quickly assures him that he has no doubts about the cool alarm system and he just wants to be extra safe. However, Daggers brings up the question that's been on everyone's mind, which is if Lloyd has any trust in his own party. Lloyd is caught off guard as Daggers points out that he always takes night guard duty alone and never relies on them, which makes it safe to assume he has trust issues. At that moment, Lloyd remembers Merlin saying he's not good at doing anything by himself and Alan calling him a useless slob, so he says that he pushes himself hard to avoid holding his team back. To his surprise, Daggers tells him he is completely fine with Lloyd holding them back and proudly says they formed a team to cover each other's weaknesses, because that is the whole goal of teamwork, so Lloyd should learn to rely on them more. At that moment, Lloyd facepalms because he never even thought of something that obvious before, and Daggers genuinely wonders how he managed to survive till now. Then Lloyd nervously asks if it is really okay for him to be a useless teammate, but Daggers assures him that he's anything but useless, so he should relax and get some sleep. Back at the campfire, Lloyd finally lies down with the others, and the simple fact that he now has comrades he can actually rely on makes him feel genuinely happy inside. The next morning, he walks up to Yu and finally builds up the courage to ask her if she could fetch him some water. Yu instantly lights up the moment she hears that while Lloyd smiles awkwardly. With that, the two of them head into the forest together while the other three secretly stalk them from behind, feeling proud. Meanwhile, in a mansion far away, a spy reports to his purple-haired master named Michael that the magic stones have been placed exactly according to plan, which allows Michael to magically pinpoint a special location on the map. Then Michael asks the spy about the powerful adventurers from Ishtar, and the spy confirms that most of them were sent on a mission to handle the monster swarms, just as they had planned, and now only the weaker ones are left in town other than the hero's party. Michael says it's a shame they couldn't get rid of the hero, then grins with excitement to see how long the hero's party will hold them back. After that, Michael orders his spy to inform the client that their time has finally come with an evil grin on his ugly face. Meanwhile, back in the forest, Lloyd and the others start to feel that the woods are suspiciously quiet, and Cross says it's really strange that they haven't seen a single monster since they left camp. Yu tries to stay positive and asks Lloyd if it's thanks to his magic, but he makes it clear that his spell only detects monsters and doesn't scare them away. Hearing that, Dagus gets worried about what's going on, so Lloyd expands his detection range when suddenly he senses something really dangerous nearby. Yu quickly asks what it is, and he reveals that there's a huge monster horde just 2 kilometers ahead of them, which Cross thinks is exactly where they are going. But before Lloyd can confirm it, Yu suddenly takes a timeout because she just can't believe how massive Lloyd's detection area really is. He casually says it's pretty average for a mage, while Silica laughs and points out that it's actually 10 times bigger than what normal mages can do. Before Yu can take the conversation off track, Dagus quickly reminds everyone that they have a bigger problem to worry about. With that, they head to the farm where the number of monsters is way higher than what was written in the original quest. Looking from above, Yu says she's never seen this many high wolves gathered in one place. But what concerns Lloyd more is the large group of monsters he can't detect anymore. Silica also points out that the forest has many monsters more powerful than high wolves, which means all of those creatures have gone somewhere else. Just then, Lloyd gets an idea and asks Yu if she knows where the farm's owner is because he wants to ask him some questions, but she tells him the man got injured and is living in town with his son. Right then, Cross spots something in the swarm and tells everyone he sees a strange stone in the field, but Silica and Yu don't see anything. Hearing that, Lloyd casts a spell to zoom in and also spots a huge big black rock. After Yu begs him to use the spell on her too, he casts it on everyone, and they all get chills after watching the creepy aura coming from it, which Lloyd thinks is dark magic. Looking closer, he confirms it's orc magic, which is a rare power that some orcs use to control monsters. Then Lloyd senses something and uses his detection magic again, only to discover that another massive horde of monsters is heading right toward them, and this time there are thousands of them. It hits him that the magic stone was planted on purpose to attract them, and he thinks it is suspicious that someone would use an indirect way like this to wipe out adventurers. Losing all hope, Cross suggests they should just run for it, but Yu gets angry and refuses to abandon the farm. Cross asks her if she really thinks they can handle 1,000 monsters, which makes her go quiet, while Dagas and Silica point it's already too late to run even if they wanted to. At that moment, Lloyd confidently says he has a plan to win, but first, they will need to destroy the magic stone. He turns to Cross and asks if he can hit the target from that distance, and Cross says he won't miss even though he can't promise the stone will break, and that's good enough for Lloyd. With that, Cross locks in on the target while Lloyd uses every enhancement spell he knows to make the shot so powerful that it instantly shatters the crystal. Cross is blown away by how strong the spell was, and Lloyd explains that he cast his magic on both Cross and his weapon. Lloyd's clever thinking leaves the whole team shaking, but he says the only thing he really did was use support spells, so the real hero is Cross, who shot up the magic stone like an American school. After that, Yu notices the wolves are now fighting each other, and Lloyd explains that their instincts came back just like he planned. That amazes Yu, but he reveals the monster horde is still coming full speed, even though the stone isn't controlling them anymore. With that, Lloyd and the others stand ready outside the forest to face the incoming horde. Spiders, wolves, and all kinds of nasty monsters come rushing out of the forest, and even while Silica and Yu start to panic, Lloyd tells them to hold on until he gives the signal. They all grind their teeth and hold their ground until the very last second. Just as the monsters leap towards Silica, Lloyd finally gives the signal, and she swings her staff to create a fire tornado that instantly vaporizes everything it touches. Seeing that, Yu is stunned and asks what Lloyd did to her, and casually explains that he just boosted her magic power and made her spells more efficient. Then he asks Silica if she can do it again, and she says she still has enough magic left for 5 more spells. He tells her to switch to wind magic next, and after that, he runs over to Cross, who's been waiting for his turn now that all the monsters are blinded by all the smoke from the forest fire. Using telepathy to link their minds, Lloyd shares the locations of every bird monster hidden inside the smoke. Now that he sees the bird monsters crystal clear, Cross starts mowing them down one by one like a hitman with a sniper rifle. Then Lloyd rushes back to Silica to pull off the final step of his master plan. When she tells him she's out of mana, he gently holds her hand and transfers all of his remaining mana to her. Using his magic, she casts one last spell to put out the fire raging through the forest, but then collapses from using too much magic. Daggers and Yu cheer for her heroic save and then thank Lloyd for coming up with such a five-head plan, but he humbly smiles and says he was only doing his job as the support. With that, Daggers and Yu go off to clean up the remaining monsters, while Lloyd drops onto his back and thinks to himself that he still has a long way to go if even a short fight like this left him wasted. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.